Chapter 1. I'll be returning to Jingzhou to reunite with you in a week. On the other end of the line, Mario was so overwhelmed he choked up. Good. You said there are still things you need to settle. Your mom and I will respect your decision. Our sweet daughter. We've waited over 20 years for this day. After hanging up, I stared at the DNA test report in my hand, feeling dazed. Everything felt like a dream. Suddenly becoming the daughter of a billionaire. Like a dream, getting a second chance at life and changing my doomed fate. Even more like a dream. The police had cautioned me repeatedly before I finally left the station. Mario was still abroad and couldn't come back immediately. Which suited me fine. I needed time to process this earth-shattering news. On my way home, my phone rang again and again from inside my bag. When I finally checked, I saw Luis's name flashing on the screen. After he called for the 10th time without giving up, I took a deep breath and answered. Selena, are you deaf or blind? How dare you take so long to pick up? His furious voice made it clear how displeased he was. Honestly, I couldn't even remember the last time Luis spoke to me without anger. Hearing no response from me, he didn't rush to continue. Instead, I heard a soft, girlish voice by his side. Lily's voice. She whispered, Luis, don't forget the plan. Then couldn't help but giggle, probably just imagining how humiliated I'd soon be made her laugh. Reminded, Luis coughed and said, come to West City. I'm injured. Very seriously injured. And then, he hung up. I stared at the disconnected screen, my mind flashing back to the same day last life, April Fool's Day. At that time, I was already overwhelmed by the shocking news from the police. When I received word that Luis had been badly hurt in West City, without thinking, I drove like a maniac to find him, but I ended up crashing into a large truck. My car was crushed, and my spine, legs, and arms were twisted beyond recognition. The unbearable pain made every breath agony. The moment before I lost consciousness, my phone on the dashboard lit up, Luis's name flashing on the screen. With my last ounce of strength, I answered the call, only to hear Luis's mocking laugh. Happy April Fool's Day, Selena. Lily was right, you're such a gullible idiot. West City is under construction. No one's allowed through. Enjoy your night stranded in the middle of nowhere. Then Lily grabbed the phone eagerly. Oops, sorry. But you did upset me last time. Remember? If you get on your knees and beg, maybe I'll consider letting you spend a little less time freezing out there. Ha 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 ha. Their laughter echoed through the phone, while I slowly drifted into death. Now, reborn, I had long since killed any foolish hopes I had for Luis. At exactly midnight, Luis stormed back into the house. At that moment, I had just booked my flight to Jingzhou for a week later. Seeing me sitting calmly in the living room, he flew into a rage, storming toward me and clamping his hands around my throat. Selena, are you fucking tired of living? How dare you disobey me? His fingers tightened around my neck. I struggled instinctively, but the difference in physical strength between men and women made my resistance almost laughable. Seeing the pain on my face, Luis smiled in satisfaction. You're getting more and more disobedient. Huh? Lily even asked me if we were going too far by messing with you. Now I see. No matter how we humiliate you, it's exactly what you deserve. I gasped desperately for air, like a fish stranded on the sand. Just as the last traces of oxygen were about to leave my body, I caught sight of the ashtray on the table. Without a second thought, I grabbed it and smashed it down hard onto Luis's head. Chapter 2. Blood, bright and shocking, streamed down Luis's forehead. He yelped in pain and threw me off, raising a hand in disbelief to touch the blood on his face. I collapsed onto the couch, coughing violently for a long time, before finally catching my breath again. The way Luis had just tried to kill me, compared to the man who once swore to love me forever and never let me shed a single tear, was worlds apart. Back in our poorest days, I had worked myself to the bone to support him, holding down 4 different jobs at once, sleeping barely 3 hours a day, destroying my health and draining every ounce of my strength. And in the end, I had raised a heartless monster. The memory of the pain from my last life's car crash was still vivid, but even worse, was the chilling coldness Luis had shown. Selena! Luis's furious roar jolted me from my thoughts. He clutched his bleeding head. His glare so fierce it could bore a hole through me. I looked at him, and burst out laughing, startled by my sudden laughter. He frowned in confusion. Are you crazy? Do you even realize what you just did? Hearing that, I wiped the tears of laughter from my eyes, and looked at him coldly. Luis, what I just did to you doesn't even amount to 1,000th of what you've done to me. What's wrong? Can't handle it? 4 years. Because of love and unwillingness to give up, I had swallowed insult after insult. In the end, I lost not only myself, but also my life. Luis obviously wasn't used to this new me. Still, he sneered arrogantly. You're the one who can't handle it. Selena, let me warn you, if you don't behave, I won't hesitate for a second to throw you away. And then what will you be? A pathetic orphan, barren and broken, so worthless that not even a homeless man would want you. He said this as he walked up to me, grabbing my chin roughly, forcing me to meet his eyes. His voice turning cruel and icy. You should be grateful, at least for now. I still remember how you once sacrificed everything for me. Lily doesn't even want to get married. Otherwise, I would have thrown you away long ago like the useless burden you are. Looking straight into his eyes, I laughed mockingly. There's no need for you to bother, Luis. I want a divorce. The air instantly froze. I could clearly feel it. The moment Luis heard those words, his hand gripping my chin tightened violently. For a long time, he said nothing, half squinting as he studied my face, trying to find even a trace of anger or bluffing. Unfortunately for him, he found nothing. Luis sneered coldly, then let go of me, his smile growing darker and more sinister. Selena, he said, between us, only I get to decide when it's over. Besides, after all these years, you almost gave your life for me. I don't believe you can actually leave. Admit it. You're hopelessly, pathetically in love with me. I'll take your little outburst today as some twisted way of playing hard to get, but don't ever let me hear it again. With that, he stood up and walked away without looking back. I watched his retreating figure, but inside, there was nothing. No hatred, no sadness, no regret. So this was what it felt like, to be completely, utterly done with someone. No matter what he said or did now, he could no longer stir even a ripple in my heart. Slowly, I rose and walked into the bedroom. I pulled out a suitcase and started packing. Yet even after stuffing in everything I could possibly take, I couldn't even fill 2 suitcases. 10 years. I had spent a full decade with Luis, and now, on the day we were to part ways, all I had to show for it was 2 half-empty suitcases. Pathetic. Just like our so-called love, I lowered my eyes, gazing at the plain silver ring on my left ring finger, the one Luis had given me when he proposed. Back then, he secretly worked multiple side jobs for months, just to save up enough money, 10,000 yuan, to buy that ring and propose. That day, he knelt on one knee, his eyes red, his back trembling with sincerity as he said, Selena, you're the angel who saved my life. From now on, I only want to spend my life with you. No matter what happens, I will never betray you. Never let go of your hand. I have nothing now. But one day, when I succeed, I'll give you the world. I believe. The Luis back then wasn't lying, but promises are like sand slipping through your fingers. Once you loosen your grip, there's nothing left. I took a deep breath, slid the ring off my finger. It had been worn for so long that a deep ring mark remained, but that was fine. Once the ring is gone, the mark will fade too, just like our story, coming to an end. Without hesitation, I threw the ring into the trash. Then, I calmly dialed my lawyer's number. Draft a divorce agreement for me, I said flatly. Deliver it to my house tomorrow. Chapter 3. 3 days before I left, I had already packed everything I needed to take. During those days, Luis never came home, but from Lily's social media posts, I got a glimpse of his life. He took her overseas to watch a concert, personally cooked romantic dinners for her, even lovingly hand-washed her intimate clothes. Seeing him so gentle and attentive, I couldn't help but remember, during the 6 years I had miscarried again and again, every time I was too weak to even get out of bed, Luis would still point at my nose and curse. "Useless woman. You can't even keep a child alive. No wonder you're an orphan. You're destined to live your life without family or love. If it weren't for the fact that I feel obligated to you, I would have dumped you 100 times by now. I must have been blind to ever love you." The more familiar someone is, the more precisely they know how to wound you. I took the divorce papers and went to Luis's company. As soon as I walked through the front door, the security guard blocked my path. He looked at me with open disdain. "Miss," the boss said without his permission, "you're not allowed upstairs. Please leave." Luis had made a fortune with his first startup. But at the same time, he had been blinded by fame and wealth. His very first mistress had been his secretary. I had once shown up crying and making a scene at his office. Ever since then, Luis banned me from stepping foot in his company again. The memory flashed through my mind. I shot the guard a cold glare, ignored him completely, and walked straight to the elevator. When the doors opened, I stepped out and headed directly to Luis's office. His assistant spotted me and rushed forward anxiously. "Miss, what are you doing here?" "Luis is in a meeting." I didn't even spare her a glance. Without hesitation, I pushed open the door to Luis's office. As the door swung open, a sharp scream pierced the air. Inside the spacious office, Lily was straddling Luis on the sofa, both of them half-dressed, their intentions crystal clear. For a second, I froze. Then I calmly walked inside. Luis roared in fury. "Selena, what the hell are you doing?" He hurried to grab a jacket to cover Lily's body. Lily, smirking triumphantly, straightened her clothes and sauntered over to me. She looked me up and down with disdain, then arrogantly threw off her jacket, thrusting out her chest proudly. "No wonder Luis says you're disgusting," she sneered. "Look at what you're wearing. My maid dresses better than you." She tossed her hair, stepping provocatively closer, and whispered, "Luis likes women like me, not pathetic old maids like you. Selena, if I were you, slap." Before she could finish, I raised my hand and slapped her across the face without hesitation. She stumbled backward, clutching her cheek in shock. You dare hit me?" I snorted coldly, unmoved. "Why would I need a special occasion to slap garbage like you? You keep bragging that Luis loves you. What a joke. You're not the first woman he's called love, and you sure as hell won't be the last. But you two deserve each other. Scumbag and homewrecker. I wish you both a lifetime of misery together." Lily was so furious, she couldn't even form words. Luis rushed forward, pulling her into his arms protectively, then shoved me hard, caught off balance. I fell heavily to the ground. Standing over me, he roared, "Get out!" I swallowed down my urge to scream at him. I hadn't forgotten why I was here. I took a deep breath, pulled out the disguised divorce agreement, and said coldly, "The CEO of Rinhao Real Estate came to the house to get your signature. Since you won't let me inside your company anymore, I brought it here myself." Luis froze for a second, then snatched the document from my hand. Without even looking at it, he scrawled his signature across the last page, and then threw the papers in my face, looking down at me with pure contempt. "What are you still doing here? Get out!" I gathered the scattered documents from the floor, got up, and walked out without looking back. Behind me, Luis didn't spare me a second glance, already busy comforting a sobbing Lily in his arms. Chapter 4. On the day I left, for the first time in years, I splurged on an expensive dress for myself, got my hair done, and put on light makeup. Staring at the woman in the mirror, almost reborn, a wave of bittersweet emotion rose in my chest. 10 years. I had lost myself for an entire decade. But from now on, I would live for myself alone. I was just about to leave, dragging my suitcase toward the door, when I opened it and ran straight into Luis, who had rushed back to grab some documents. Our eyes met. He stared at my transformed appearance for a long time, his mouth opening and closing several times, at a loss for words, before finally frowning and asking, "Selena? Where are you going, all dressed up like that?" At this point, I had no desire to waste any more words on him. I casually made up an excuse. A friend from the orphanage is getting married. They invited me to the wedding. Luis clearly didn't believe me. He just thought I seemed strange today, though he couldn't quite put his finger on why. The real estate boss said he never received the signed contract. "Where's the document you handed me the other day?" Hearing that, I turned back into the house, grabbed the stack of papers from the table, the signed divorce agreement hidden inside, and handed it to him. He took the folder with an annoyed expression and turned to leave, but after just a few steps, Luis stopped, turned back, and sneered arrogantly, "All dressed up for once, huh? But if you're trying to get my attention, don't even bother. An ugly duckling is still an ugly duckling. Don't dream about becoming a swan. I don't care whether that wedding is real or fake. I'm warning you, don't play hard to get with me. You'll never escape me. So save yourself the trouble." With that, he left without looking back. I felt nothing, not even a ripple inside. Dragging my suitcase, I headed straight for the airport. After checking in and waiting at the gate, my phone suddenly rang inside my bag. It was Luis. Without even thinking, I rejected the call, but he kept calling again, and again, and again. Of course, I had no intention of answering. Then a flood of text messages started popping up. "Selena, what's this divorce agreement about? Pick up the damn phone. If you explain properly right now, maybe I'll forgive you. Otherwise, even if you kneel and beg, I won't. You think pulling this dirty trick will make me panic? Dream on. The divorce agreement is fake, right? You're just mad at me, right? Selena, come back. Let's talk this through. I don't blame you for trying to get my attention this way. Where are you? I'll come find you. Selena, pick up." I looked at the endless stream of texts, and just found it hilarious. Even now, he still thought I was playing games. Without hesitation, I pulled out a SIM card pin, removed the SIM card, snapped it in half, and tossed it into the trash can beside me. The moment the card came out, Luis's last message popped up. "Selena, please don't go." Chapter 5. 2 years later, as I descended the grand staircase, wearing a stunning scarlet backless gown, my parents, Mario and Monica, hurried over to meet me. My mother beamed as she took my hand, her eyes filled with pride. "Of course, you're my daughter. No wonder you're so beautiful." My father immediately chimed in, eager to take credit. "Hey, don't forget, she's half my work too." My mother gave him a disdainful glance, and without missing a beat, retorted, "Have you seen yourself lately? If people knew a guy like you had such a beautiful daughter, they wouldn't even believe it." "Monica, you're breaking my heart here." Watching them banter, I couldn't help but smile warmly, grabbing both of their hands. All right. Both of you deserve credit. The appointment banquet's about to start. Let's go." On the way to the venue, I gazed out the window, watching the city streets blur past, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Life could be so wildly unpredictable. Even 2 years ago, I never would have believed that I could be living a life like this. Once an unloved orphan, now surrounded by love, spoiled, cherished, and wanted. Today was the 2nd anniversary of my return home, and tonight, my father would officially introduce me to the world as his heir to the family business. When the black Maybach pulled up to the banquet hall, the paparazzi outside immediately turned all their cameras toward me. The moment the door opened, a blinding wave of flashbulbs exploded. I stepped out gracefully, a breathtaking vision in red. "Good evening, everyone. I'm Julia. Did you hear? She was kidnapped by her nanny as a child. Only found a couple of years ago. She's never been seen in public until now. Yeah, Mario has been keeping her hidden away. Now that Julia's set to inherit the company. He's finally showing her off. I can't wait to see what the heiress of a billion-dollar fortune looks like. I stood among the crowd, listening to the endless chatter swirling around me, idly swirling the champagne in my hand. I took a sip, just about to step onto the stage when a shrill female voice called from behind. Well, if it isn't Selena. I froze for a second, then turned around. Sure enough, it was Lily. Seeing it was really me, her mocking smile widened. She sauntered over, her eyes dripping with disdain. What is someone as cheap as you doing here? Before I could answer, she sneered again. Oh, I get it. You must have found yourself a sugar daddy. Her voice wasn't exactly quiet. In an instant, all eyes in the room turned toward me, whispering among themselves. Just then, another all too familiar figure appeared. Luis shoved through the crowd, staring at me in disbelief. What the hell are you doing here? Lily immediately clung to his arm, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Luis. Finally! I found you. She tossed me a disdainful look and added loudly. Look at the woman you wasted 2 years looking for. Turns out she's nothing but some rich man's mistress now. Otherwise, how could trash like Selena even set foot in a place like this? Luis acted like he didn't hear a word Lily said, shaking off her hand and walking step by step toward me. Instinctively, I took a step back. At that moment, a tall figure suddenly appeared, shielding me behind him. Before I could even get a good look, the familiar crisp scent in the air told me exactly who it was. Elias, dressed in an obviously expensive, tailor-made suit, flashed a lazy, careless smile as he looked at Luis. Sir, please stay away from my fiancé. Chapter 6. As soon as those words fell, the entire room erupted into gasps. After all, everyone here knew who Elias was, the golden prince of Jingzhou's elite circles, but no one had ever heard of him having a fiancé. Everyone knew Elias had always been proud and unattainable, never linked to any woman by even a rumor. Luis froze for a second, then turned bloodshot eyes toward me. Selena, is he telling the truth? Does it have anything to do with you? My voice was cold as ice, and my eyes even colder, as if unable to bear it. Luis suddenly went crazy, shoving past Elias and grabbing my wrist to drag me away. While pulling me, he kept muttering, "This isn't where you belong. Come back with me." Just then, my father Mario stepped onto the stage, picked up the microphone, and spoke slowly and clearly. Thank you all for coming today to my daughter's appointment banquet. As some of you may know, our daughter was lost to us for many years, but thankfully, God has returned her to us, and our long search was not in vain. Today, I officially introduce my daughter, and the sole heir of our group, Selena. As his voice fell, he turned to look directly at me. Hearing his words, I yanked my hand free from Luis, ignoring his stunned and confused expression. I walked step by step toward the stage. Finally, I stood proudly beside Mario, under the gaze of countless people. I smiled, accepted the microphone from my father, and turned to face the crowd. Good evening, everyone. I'm Selena. Starting tomorrow, I'll be joining the group to begin my management training. I look forward to working with you all. As my words fell, I caught a glimpse of Luis in the crowd, his face as pale as a ghost. His expression grew stiff. His gaze met mine, and even the muscles in his face twitched uncontrollably. Congratulations, Miss Selena. Miss Selena, you're so beautiful and elegant. I'd love to be friends with you. Exactly. Miss Selena, it's my birthday soon. Would you honor us by coming? In less than half an hour, I was swarmed by guests, each trying to strike up a conversation. After exchanging numbers, my phone was flooded with new contacts, most of whom I couldn't even remember. Seeing my discomfort, Elias smiled and made his way over, slipping an arm around my shoulders and leading me out of the crowd. Overwhelmed already? He teased, handing me a glass of orange juice. I gratefully accepted it, drinking it down in one gulp. I knew there'd be people trying to cozy up to me, But I didn't expect this many. Elias just smiled silently. His deep, fox-like eyes, locking onto my face. The intensity of his gaze made me nervous. I fidgeted and asked, "Is there something on my face?" He shook his head, reached out with his slender fingers, and gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear. "Selena," he said softly. "Congratulations." Unable to help it, I smiled. Since returning to Jingzhou, Elias was the first person, besides my family, who knew my true identity. My father once joked that Elias was my fiancé by arrangement. Of course, we all knew it was just a joke, but from our first meeting, Elias had treated me extraordinarily well. He had taken me to places I once never dared to dream of, taught me how to survive in these elite circles. And when people mocked my background at the orphanage, he would always shield me, telling them, "If you bully her, you're making an enemy of me. Think carefully about that." In these 2 years, he had given me so much care, and I had grown genuinely fond of him. After standing quietly in the corner for a while, more people came to surround Elias, not wanting to deal with the crowd anymore. I found a chance to slip away into the garden to catch my breath, but just as I stepped into the garden, someone suddenly grabbed me tightly from behind. In the next second, a hoarse, familiar voice whispered in my ear, "Selena, I miss you." Chapter 7. The garden was dimly lit, and aside from Luis and me, there was no one else around. I abruptly tore myself free, took 2 steps back, and when I turned to look, Luis's bloodshot eyes stared at me, as if I had grievously wronged him. Why are you Mario's daughter? Selena, you have no idea how I almost lost my mind searching for you these past 2 years. Hearing that, I almost laughed out loud. Luis, you really are insane. But I already gave you what you wanted. I stepped aside for you and Lily. What more do you want? I don't want her. He suddenly roared like a wounded child. I only want you. Luis staggered toward me, his voice trembling. When you left without a word, leaving just that divorce agreement, do you know how much it hurt me? I almost tore Yun City apart looking for you. As he spoke, he shakily pulled out a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, the very one I had thrown away back then. Selena, you're so cruel. You actually tossed this ring into the trash. I frowned impatiently, my voice filled with disdain. Luis, you think I'm cruel? If I had even half your cruelty, I would have destroyed you long ago. I don't ever want to see you again. Get out of my life, and do it fast. I turned and walked away without a second glance, but as I passed by, Luis grabbed my wrist. Selena, I know you're still angry about the past, but I've changed. I swear I've changed. Please don't leave me again. You know, I really do love. Slap. Before he could finish, I swung my hand without hesitation, the crisp sound echoing in the night. I didn't even blink. Coldly, I said, "Don't say disgusting things like that. It makes me want to vomit." And without another glance, I walked forward. Just then, Lily appeared. The moment she saw me, her arrogance from before vanished. She instinctively shrank back 2 steps, her face full of panic and fear. I curled my lips into a faint smile, crossed my arms, and slowly walked up to her. Lily, is your mouth always that filthy? You're quite good at spitting out lies. Selena, I didn't mean to. I just, shoo. I raised a finger to my lips, mocking her with a casual smile. Didn't you always act so high and mighty? Just because your family had money? Well, funny thing, after returning home these past 2 years, I found out your family does business with mine, and a father who can't even raise a decent daughter. Clearly isn't someone we want to keep working with. I've already had someone call your father. Our partnership ends today. Oh, and we also informed Yun City's other partners. Lily, you might want to rush back home. Your father might already have passed out from the shock. Seeing her face turn ashen, I smiled with satisfaction and walked away without a second thought. Chapter 8. Starting work at the company was tough at first. A lot of things were still overwhelming, but thanks to the guidance from my father and Elias over the past 2 years, even when things got difficult, I was able to overcome them. By the time the last ray of sunlight disappeared outside the window, I finally finished the day's work. Stretching lazily, I heard the office door open. Elias walked in, smiling warmly. And in the next moment, a small strawberry cake appeared before me. "Here to pick you up," and brought a little reward for our hardworking Selena. He unwrapped a spoon, scooped up a bite of cake, and held it up to my lips. "Try it. It's from your favorite bakery." I blinked in surprise. That bakery definitely wasn't on the way. Still, I smiled and ate the cake obediently. Sure enough, one bite and the exhaustion of the whole day melted away. Afterward, Elias took me to a cozy Western restaurant. Soft piano music played in the background, and he sat across from me, seriously helping me cut my steak. I stared at him for a long while, then couldn't help but ask, "Elias, why are you so good to me?" "Because I'm your fiancé," he answered casually, not even looking up, then pushed the neatly cut steak to me. "What? Planning to deny me now?" Out in the world, Elias always had the image of being cold and distant, but in front of me, he was always so gentle and attentive. Over the past 2 years, I had fallen for him long ago, but I always treated his fiancé talk as a joke, never daring to take it seriously. Still, I didn't want to overthink it. Right now was good enough. After dinner, he drove me home. We were laughing as we entered the gated community, when I spotted a figure. A drunk man crouched at my front gate. Elias immediately took my hand protectively, shielding me behind him. The man heard our footsteps and looked over. It was Luis. The moment he saw me, his eyes lit up. But when he noticed Elias holding my hand, his gaze dimmed again. Luis staggered to his feet, swaying as he approached us. Bloodshot eyes locked onto me. "Selena, you're back. This gentleman needs to leave," Elias said coldly, "or I'll call the police." He pulled me forward to leave. Suddenly, Luis cursed under his breath, swung his fist, and punched Elias straight in the face. Elias reacted immediately, his own fist striking back. In the blink of an eye, they were locked in a brutal fight, neither giving an inch, each punch landing heavily. I stood helplessly on the side, unable to pull them apart, shouting anxiously, "Stop! Please, stop fighting!" But they ignored me completely. Only after Elias gained the upper hand, pinning Luis to the ground, did the fight stop. Elias even kicked Luis disdainfully. "I've had enough of you. How dare you come bother her again?" Worried, I hurried over, checking Elias carefully. "Are you okay? Your face is bleeding. Does it hurt? Are you hurt anywhere else?" Seeing my anxious expression, Elias blinked in surprise, then grinned cheekily. "You're worried about me? Then yes. I'm seriously injured." Without warning, he dramatically flopped onto my shoulder like a spoiled puppy. I couldn't deal with him. Sighing, I helped him walk toward the house. Just as we stepped forward, Luis reached out, grabbing the hem of my pants, lying there bloodied. He looked up at me with tears streaming down his face. "Selena, I'm hurt too. Why don't you care about me anymore? Back then, even a scratch on my hand would make you cry from worry. Now you won't even look at me." His voice broke. His breathing grew ragged. "I swear, I've been living in regret these past 2 years. Just thinking about losing you makes me want to die. Please, for the sake of our 10 years together, forgive me. I swear I'll." Too late. I cut him off coldly, pulling my pants free from his grasp. Looking down at him with disdain, I said, "Your so-called deep love comes cheaper than dirt. I don't love you anymore." With that, leaving him drowning in despair, I helped Elias inside without a second glance. Chapter 9. Wait. I'll go find MMM. As soon as I entered the house, I was about to get the medical kit when everything spun around, and Elias had me pinned against the door. Before I could react, his lips were on mine. I widened my eyes in shock, my hands pushing against his chest. But I didn't resist. Elias raised his hand, gripping the back of my head, his other hand wrapping around my soft waist. Pulling me closer to him, he deepened the kiss, gradually intensifying it. I couldn't breathe, my hands weakly hanging around his neck. In the stillness, the air was thick with raw, unrestrained desire. Finally, when I was almost out of breath, Elias pulled away, gasping. His eyes were clouded with lust. His voice hoarse. "Selena, you always ask me why I'm so good to you. Don't you understand? I love you. I want to protect you. I want to be your real fiancé. You said you don't love him anymore. Can you love me?" His eyes were wet, his tone pleading. I felt my heart soften. Just hours ago, I thought the present was the best. But now, I wanted forever with Elias. I smiled and leaned in closer, tiptoeing to kiss the corner of his lips. "As you wish." He didn't respond immediately. When he did, he kissed me again, this time with the force of a storm. The next day, as I was heading out to work, I spotted Luis kneeling by the iron gate. I figured he'd been there all night. Elias, seeing this, walked over and kissed the top of my head. "I'll wait for you in the car," with a menacing look at Luis. He stepped into the car. After he left, Luis let out a bitter laugh. "Is he really your fiancé? Selena, I don't believe you'll ever love anyone but me." His tone was so certain. I couldn't help but feel a bit of admiration. How could one person be so confident? "Luis, whether you believe it or not, doesn't matter to me, but as you can see, he is my fiancé. We're happy and doing well. So please, don't come to disturb me." With that, I turned to walk away. Luis, desperate, reached for my hand, but as if realizing something, his hand hung in the air, trembling before dropping. "I knew you didn't love me. The moment you left without a word, I just couldn't accept it." He dropped to his knees, his eyes red, looking up at me. "I just can't accept that you don't love me. Selena, I really want to go back to the past with you. I stopped wanting that long ago." I replied coldly. "Those days, when I felt like life wasn't worth living, aren't worth remembering. A person like you, just the sight of you makes me want to puke." "Luis, I never imagined you would make me feel this disgusted. You can rest assured. I haven't forgotten anything you've done to me. I'll make sure you lose everything you've worked so hard for. Your wealth, your status, everything. It's what you deserve." With that, I turned and walked away without a second glance. The next moment, I heard a sharp slap. Luis was on the ground, slapping himself hard, again and again. As he slapped himself, he kept muttering, "It's my fault. I'm so ungrateful. I'm worthless. Sorry, Selena. I really am sorry. But I know I was wrong." Chapter 10. Less than a week after, Luis went bankrupt. He was someone who had crawled up from the bottom, and once he fell, there was no shortage of people looking down on him. I didn't want to listen to his endless apologies. I just wanted him to face the consequences of his actions and disappear from my life completely. But clearly, Luis wasn't going to give up so easily, even with nothing left. He kept clinging to me. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him, so I called the police and had him locked up. It was from that day onwards that my life returned to the peace and stability it had once had. Elias and I were getting along very well, and both of our families supported us being together. So within 6 months, we got engaged. That night after the engagement party, Elias, a little drunk, pulled me tightly into his arms and kept saying, "Selena, now I'm really your fiancé." Looking at his silly, happy face, I couldn't help but laugh. Time flew by, and months passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, Elias and I became regulars in the news. After all, two of the wealthiest families coming together was a topic of endless gossip, but I was grateful, because even though I was the heir to a billion-dollar fortune, my parents never forced anything on me. Elias and I truly loved each other, It wasn't a business marriage, and for that, I was content. It was just another ordinary evening. I had finished work and was waiting for Elias to pick me up. When my phone rang, I saw an unfamiliar number on the screen. I hesitated for a moment, but I still decided to answer. Hello? There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and I frowned, about to hang up, when I finally heard Luis's voice. Selena, are you getting married to him? I snorted coldly. What? Is your detention over? Luis let out a self-deprecating laugh. Yeah, if it weren't for you being so heartless, I'd probably never know what it's like to be detained, or experience falling from the top to rock bottom. But like you said, I brought it upon myself. I accept that. Selena, while I was in there, I kept seeing you and him on the news. And when I saw your smile, I suddenly realized you haven't smiled like that in front of me in a long time. I've wronged you so much. Even if I gave my life to atone, it wouldn't be enough. So, I won't bother you again. I'll leave with the guilt. Just like you wanted. Luis's voice cracked suddenly. Sorry. I promised I wouldn't let you down. Sorry. I promised I'd give you a home. Sorry. I swear I loved you the most. Sorry. Selena. With each apology, Luis hung up. After that night, I never heard from him again. 6 months later, I saw his obituary on social media. Apparently, Luis had jumped from a tall building, his body shattered beyond recognition. I didn't feel any satisfaction from avenging myself. All I felt was the impermanence of life, and how, in 2 lifetimes, he and I had parted ways. There would be no need to cross paths again. The wrong person should stay in the past.